Yo, what's up? I'm Mike Fio.
And I am Nick Fio, and we are the Fio Bros.
And this is episode Dose of a new series on the channel where after each episode of The Amazing Race, season 37,
which we are on,
we are sharing our top 3 lessons learned.
And these lessons will be helpful to any future racers, but also to anyone who just wants to win at the game of life.
All right, so let's get into it. What is lesson number 1?
Lesson number 1 from season 37, episode 2 of The Amazing Race is direction over speed. Mike, what does that mean?
So the best way to bring this one to life is by telling a story of the 2 men who are stranded on an island. They are dropped into the middle of this island in this dense forest, and there's these thick trees and bushes all around them, and they each have a machete in their hand. One of them just starts chopping away, like desperately trying to get to the edge of the island in any direction. They just immediately start chopping. The other sees that first guy and says, that doesn't seem so smart to me. Drops his machete, climbs to the top of the tree, and then yells down to his friend saying, hey, you're chopping in the wrong direction. The edge of the island is actually that way. So it's the perfect example of direction over speed. Basically, where you are going is way more important than the speed at which you are going, because if you just start running in the wrong direction, you're now just moving further away from your target destination. And this happened to us right out of the gate. As soon as episode 2 begins, what did we do, Nick?
So we got directions in Hong Kong that we were going to Osaka, Japan. And in order to get to Osaka, Japan, we needed to get to a travel agent and book our flights. And it said to make our way to, I forget that exact...
Crocodile Center.
No, I forget the exact name of the travel. It was like Sunshine Travel Agency in Crocodile Center. So we ran to our taxi, told them, yo, this is where we got to go. We got to go to Sunshine, whatever the hell it was, travel agency. And we weren't finding Crocodile, but we were just like, screw it. Like, this is the name of the thing. This is where we're going to go. And we sped to this destination that we quickly put into the Google Maps on this guy's phone. And when we got there, we realized that we were in the complete wrong place. And they didn't show too much of this, but Mike and I were there for like a good 10 minutes with looking like we were chickens with our heads cut off, running around trying to find this Crocodile Center. And every person we asked was just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then finally, there's one dude that spoke English, saw us, and he was just, I guess he felt so bad for us. He's like, all right, you guys are in the wrong spot. He spoke Chinese to our taxi driver and told him exactly where we had to go.
Yeah, he pointed us in the right direction.
He pointed us in the right direction. He was the man that climbed the tree.
Exactly.
In the analogy.
Yeah.
And we probably could have saved ourselves some time and maybe gotten on that first flight if we didn't make that stupid mistake.
So the thing with this concept of direction over speed is you think that because you're in a race, you need to be going full speed ahead at all times. But what we've realized is that there are key decision points throughout each leg where it is worth taking that one step back to take your time and decide on your direction so that once you do know your very clear destination, now you can start sprinting again. But it's like a stop and go process, and you need to be able to identify where those stops, those important stops are. And then what do? We get through the roadblock, crush the roadblock. Now we're at another crucial decision point where it would have been very wise for us to stop, for us to decide which direction are we going to go on this detour, because there was very obviously an easier detour choice here, which was mochi. Mochi, it looked like it didn't matter what your mochi balls looked like. You were going to go an approval there.
Yeah, that judge was way more graceful than our sumo man who is still living in our nightmares.
Yeah, so what they don't show is Nick and I are like super pumped because we crushed the roadblock, the drumming roadblock, the taiko
with Alyssa and Josiah.
With Alyssa and Josiah, we get the taxi, and we're one of the first few teams that arrive at this Mochi or Mawashi detour. And at first, we're like looking at the Mawashi and we're thinking to ourselves, like, there's still, like, the teams that got here early are still here. Maybe this is a little bit harder than we think. Let's go check out Mochi. So there is not one other team at Mochi. We're standing at Mochi. They're giving us a demonstration, and I wish they showed this because it's really funny. The guy starts doing the demonstration, and he's hammering, and we're counting how many hammers he's doing. 1, 2,
I think
3.
we got over 100.
There was like over 100 hammers, and me and Nick looked at each other halfway through, and we like had this rushed, anxious energy. Like, no, this is gonna take too long. Let's just go back to the original. So we go back to Mawashi, rush that decision, only to now spend the next 2.5 hours at Mawashi because this judge was just picking on us, and we're not, like, now we're back in that anxious energy state. And all the teams that ended up going to Machi that arrived much later than us completely surpassed us. So that was another example of direction over speed. If we had just chosen the right direction and taken that step back and taken our time with that key decision point, we would have been able to sprint forward and actually maybe even get a first place finish. And instead we ended up in 10th.
Yeah.
So it's a crucial mistake.
A critical thing that you said, though, is that there's different elements to the race. There is times during the race where you need to run as fast as you possibly can. You see Phil, bam, run as fast as you possibly can, right? Then there's times where you need to slow down. And the times you need to slow down are basically, if we could summarize this, is anytime you're making a key decision. So what direction are we going in, or what detour are we choosing?
And who's going to do the roadblock?
And who's going to do the roadblock? Those are times where you need to actually slow down your thinking to make a good decision. And we, unfortunately, did not do that a couple times, and it bit us in the ass.
Yeah, we did it well for the roadblock because you made us slow down, and we heard drums, and we knew it was music, so you chose me. So that was
no, actually, that was the thing said. The paper said, who's ready to beat the competition? And one thing that we learned from watching The Amazing Race was whenever you get to these roadblock challenges, before you make your decision, just look around, see what the setting is like. And I looked up and I saw that we were about to go inside this building, and it looked like a kind of musical theater type building. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be like a drum challenge. Mike did drums. Mike played music in junior high school and stuff. He's definitely the more musical one. And then we gave it to you. So that was a time where we actually did slow down successfully, but we didn't do it the whole race.
All right, let's move on to lesson number 2, which is?
Lesson number 2 is measure twice and cut once. Mike, what does that mean?
So imagine you are a carpenter and you need to build a table and you only have one really expensive piece of wood. A bad carpenter would not measure and just start cutting. A good carpenter would measure twice, make sure he has all of his details and measurements set, and then cut once and do it right the first time. That is the analogy that we're talking about here, because we quickly realized that the Mawashi challenge, where we had to...
A diaper challenge.
It's not a diaper, bro.
I know. I like
the diaper challenge. No wonder Scott and Lori crushed it. The diaper challenge was a very attention to detail oriented task,
which we mislabeled, by the way. We looked at it in the beginning and thought it was a memory challenge, and it wasn't a memory challenge. I mean, there were some elements of memory to it, but it was really an attention to detail challenge.
And so whenever you're facing an attention to detail challenge on The Amazing Race, the whole point is the details. So what we did, the mistake that we made, was we didn't measure twice and cut once. And by the way, the problem with doing that is, let's go back to that carpenter example. If they just cut once, now they ruined their entire piece of wood. There's no going back. Now they have to start over. It was a waste of money. It was a waste of resources. And now frustration is building every time they have to start over. But if they had just taken their time in the beginning to measure and then cut it once, they would have a quality product. And yes, it might have taken them a little longer to do it right that first time, but now they can move on and keep flowing into the rest of the leg.
So to bring this down to earth, it's specifically for the race. If it's an attention to detail challenge, it's measure twice and cut once. And what Mike is talking about, which didn't really get shown a lot, was when we were doing this diaper challenge, and we would get it checked, and he would basically just grunt to us that this thing was wrong and that thing was wrong, and he kept telling us all these different things were wrong. We would have to go back off the mat and unravel the entire thing and start again from the beginning. And like you heard a lot in the race yesterday, it was not very easy to work with that material. And every time you had to unravel it, you were wasting all of this time. So it wasn't like these little mistakes that we just had to tweak. It was like we had to start all over again from the beginning. We had to buy a new piece of wood to start all over again.
Yeah. And that was mounting our frustration more and more and more.
Which led Mike to throwing his hat on the floor, which was a great part.
I mean, I really do believe that this guy was picking on us, because I think our third attempt was like near perfect, and he just kept making us go back and back again. And I think he just thought we thought we were jacked, and he's like wanted to show us like, you guys think you're big. You look like a baby in his arms.
The funniest part of it was Mike and I were getting so upset, and we were just like, oh man, I can't. And then we saw that we got the opportunity to like go against this guy and push him at the end of it, like one of the other teams got it, and we were just like, oh,
brought me back to football days.
I cannot wait for us to finish this. We are about to fuck this guy up. Like, so Mike and I get it. We're like, yes, I've been waiting for this moment. We line up in our 3-point stance, and we go, and it literally was just hitting a brick.
He just would stand up and just went, ha 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 ha. And we were just thinking, I literally hate you, bro.
And this dude, supposedly he's actually one of the heaviest people in Japan, in the history of Japan, at 600 pounds.
And he starred in one of the John Wick movies.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
And if you saw at the end, when we finally pushed him off the mat, I jumped on him, I crow hopped on him, and I hugged him. And if you like pause that, I look like a literal infant next to this dude. Yeah, that's how big he was. All right, that's a little side note, but let's get back to the lessons here.
Well, the frustration mounting is the perfect transition to lesson number 3.
Lesson number 3 is, it's just a game, keep it fun.
Yeah, this is one of the hardest lessons for us to learn, because we are so competitive. We played sports our whole life. We've had a sibling rivalry between us two our whole life, constantly competing in video games and all sorts of stuff like that. So the idea that you are going to be eliminated from the race when you're in the heat of the moment actually feels like, if you get eliminated from the race, you're going to get eliminated from planet Earth and get killed. It actually feels like a life or death scenario, almost like a Squid Games type feeling. Like, if you lose, you are going to die. That's the anxiety that starts to build in us, because we are so competitive. And so once the anxiety starts mounting, your brain just does not work properly. It does not function in the same way. You start rushing things even worse, and you start missing little details, because it's just being flooded with these negative emotions like, oh my God, am I about to die? Like, you literally feel like you are going to die. And so that's why lesson 3 is to try to remember that it's all just a game. This is not a life or death situation, and try to have fun with it. And to prove this, when you look back at the drums, you could see how much fun me and Alyssa were having with it. Like, we were smiling, we were laughing. There's a part where, like, that was one of the hardest challenges, but I had fun with it. Like, I truly did. I approached it in a way like, all right, we're going to get this. No worries. Like, this is fun. We're playing the drums. And I ended up getting it and not getting frustrated when I couldn't get it at first. But then fast forward to Mawashi, fun gets thrown out the window.
Yeah.
And frustration starts mounting, and frustration is legit kryptonite for the race.
Every episode that we've watched before this, it's been clear that most of the people that do well on this race have that energy of having fun.
Yeah.
And we seem to be having it in the beginning, and then we get very close to that near-death experience that you're talking about, and then the fun goes down.
I think we're just... competition, that competitive edge is good, but I also think that, like, fun is actually better. Like, the more fun you approach something with, the better you perform.
Yeah, but going back to this, it's just a game, keep it fun. That's really about just taking off the pressure, right? And I think a lot of it is we get in our own head and we think, okay, what will other people think if we get eliminated here? And we start thinking all this garbage when none of it really matters. Like, we're just playing a game. It is like a game. Like in 10 years, is this moment really going to matter that much? Where it's like, no, we're having fun. This is a game.
We're having fun. Yeah.
Well, on that note, those are our 3 lessons. Let's recap them real quick. Lesson number 1, direction over speed. Lesson number 2, measure twice, cut once. And lesson number 3, it's just a game. Keep it fun.
All right. Well, we hope you had fun watching this recap video, and we're sending you lots of love, and we'll see you next episode.
Love ya. Tune in next week.
Bye-bye now.
Peace.